Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be going through my process of designing a character. So this character was actually a prompt that I was given to you for a class assignment, so I'm going to be taking you through my process of that. It was a random character design challenge, and the one that I got assigned was a 60-year-old female from the 1920s that is a serial killer. So one of the first things that I did was I compiled a bunch of different references that I got from like Pinterest and just like the internet to get a feel for the time era and the vibe that I was trying to get. And then I created these different silhouettes to try to play around with different body types that I wanted to do. Having silhouettes was actually a part of the assignment, so I wanted to try to have a strong silhouette from the get-go. When I first started, I kind of wanted to do like a thin hunched over kind of pose, but then I realized that this character's 60, they're not that old, and I didn't really want to go like the old creepy route, so I decided to go a different way and do a more young, kind of like sweet but deadly look. So I was trying to make someone who fit like in the very like housewife, in a very kind of like housewife, simple kind of life sort of thing. And so that's the kind of character that I started building here. It was my first attempt at the character. I did do a few iterations because our professor actually wanted us to do a few different designs to see which one we liked better, and it ended up like being a debate. Actually, I did a poll over on Instagram because I had a few iterations that I really enjoyed. So this is the second iteration that I did. This character did not make it into the poll because I just felt that they looked a little bit too mean to really what I was going for. Although I think that this style, I was watching Flapjack, the Misadventures of Flapjack, I think is the full name of the show, while I was drawing this for part of the assignment. So I think this art style kind of from the show influenced me a little bit while I was creating this character, because there's a few characters on the show that look a little bit similar. So I think I was definitely influenced a little bit by that while I was making this character, which I think was a little funny. I did like this design. I think she has a strong face, which I really actually did enjoy, but I ended up not picking this character. They did have some good design aspects, but I didn't get that like sweet but deadly kind of feel from them. Like sweet but sinister, I guess, is what I was going for. But it was a good attempt. I'm glad I did it. And then here is the third character that I drew, which was part of the one that had a real debate. So for this character, I wanted to have a more like grandmotherly kind of sweet old lady look to her. And so that's where I was going for this one. So I wanted to have a lot more rounded features. And again, I was trying to play with that kind of body type proportions for us. So the first character that I had was very slim, and the second character was pretty slim too, so I wanted to try for like a larger, wider shapes, more shaped base, I guess. And I didn't want to go for some grandmotherly type feel, so I did give her that fluffy kind of jacket that's at the bottom because I thought that looked really nice, and we had to put a story element to this, so I was like, oh, maybe she has like a wealthy husband who, she murders, and that ends up like going to like build up her, like, I don't know, desire to murder, or like sends her down the road of killing sprees, because she is a serial killer. So that's kind of what I was going for. I did end up erasing it because I was like, oh, maybe not. And then I decided maybe a shawl would be better because, like a widow, the story I was trying to build in my head was like maybe she's somebody kind of like from the Addams family. I forgot her name, but the lady who like she just kept remarrying her husbands and like killing them and then marrying them again, marrying like a different wealthy person and then killing them, and was just kind of like a Black Widow sort of character. But in the end, this character, my first rendition, actually won. So what I did was I duplicated the character and I started playing a little bit with the pose and a little bit more of her design, specifically her clothing, because I didn't really like how plain she looked, because for this character design I did want her to be like a housewife, and so she is kind of plain looking, but I did like the shawl that I included in the other character in the third rendition. So I wanted to include that in this one as well. So I was just kind of playing around with her. I decided to make like a slightly different pose, that way I can have more of a feel of like have more depth, because I kind of, in the first drawing sketch that I did of her, I kind of hid her hands behind her, and it was a little bit hard to draw around that because she had like her arms weren't out, so I couldn't put any accessories, and I was a little bit more limited with designing the rest of her, like her outfit and stuff. So this is me just kind of messing around. I really liked the different types of hats that the ladies at the top were wearing, and hats were kind of really in fashion. And since this lady is towards like an older-ish age during the 1920s, I wanted to like still give her like a classic look, but not like a flapper, because flappers were really big during this time, but she is like a little older, so I didn't want to do that for this character. I didn't want to make her like a flapper because she's like in her 60s. So I feel like she's, you know, once you're in your 60s, you calm down a little bit. You're not as like high in partying as like a flapper would be, or that era. So I did want to keep that. And then here I was trying to find an action pose, or just like a pose to keep the character and like to get a little bit more enveloped, because that was part of our assignment. We wanted to have a strong silhouette. And so this is just me absolutely struggling with the silhouette of this character, which it was really difficult to find an action pose, because she is kind of like a sweet lady, so I wanted her to like have that calm composure thing, which I think the first initial sketch that I did had, but I needed to have an action pose or something more movement than what I currently have, because right now she's just kind of standing there, and that wasn't gonna like slide because it's not a very strong silhouette. Like, yes, her legs are apart, but her arms are still very close to her. She's very closed off, which for her character, it does fit. She is like, her story, which I actually had to write, I'll read off to you. Her story is, this is Janice Mayfield, by the way. I don't think I ever said her name. Her name is Janice Mayfield. She was a regular housewife in the 1920s. She spent her days cleaning and cooking for her wealthy husband. One day, after she accidentally overcooked a roast, her husband lashed out. This was not the first time, and she was sure it wouldn't be the last. So she did the only thing she could think of, and in the next meal, she drugged her husband and killed him. He was buried with no questions, and his immense wealth was left to her. But this was not the end. She spent years helping other women fake their husband's death, and even got rid of the bodies entirely. She continued this until eventually one of the women turned her in, and she was sentenced to death. But the number of her victims was never recorded. So that was kind of the story that I was going off of, and I was kind of thinking about. So I wanted to have, like, you know, her... Here's during this sketch is kind of like, you know, maybe she snuck something into a pie, maybe she turned, like, because I mentioned, like, you know, she got rid of the bodies entirely, so I was thinking maybe she pulled a Sweeney Todd and like cooked them into like a pie or something, like a meat pie, and like that's how she got rid of the bodies. So I was trying to play around with that idea, and I wanted to show more of like her killing, or like that side of her, like her serial killer side. But I wasn't really sure how to do that because she is kind of like a sweet lady. Also, I really messed up with the face. I was struggling so hard, so I did just kind of duplicate the face. Later you'll see me in just a second where I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna copy over the face because I couldn't get it correct a second time around. So I just I just kind of like flipped it around. But yeah, so I really wanted to try to find a pose that fit a little bit more. I'm still not the happiest with the pose that I ended up going with, but in the end of the day, it's also not too big of a deal. Like, I think it was fine how it turned out. But yeah, I did do this over a few days. The project was actually due today as I'm recording this. I presented it this morning, so I think it went well. There was a couple of things that I struggled with. I think overall the pose and the color palette, which I'll talk about later, are probably the two things that I struggled the most with. So this is kind of me trying to figure out like that final pose. I gave her a knife because I felt like, you know, maybe that was something, like, you know, she like chops up her victims or something. I don't think she would do any stabbing. Like, I don't think she would be able to physically overtake anybody if she was to attack. So I definitely think that she like she like drugs people and then attacks them. Like she puts them in a weakened state before she actually goes for it, kind of thing. And here I'm kind of like refining the pose a little bit. You just saw that I copied over the face because I was struggling severely with that. I think that's kind of an interesting thing for character designs, especially for me, because I feel like it takes a while to get used to drawing a character. So it was definitely a challenge to like have to come up with a few different characters and then like draw them over again, if that makes sense. Something that I definitely have to get used to doing. But yeah, I included poison in her other hand because that ties back to her story. I think it was a little bit too much to have both. Like both a knife and poison. It was kind of like pick one, you know. So I do think that was like a flaw in my design, but it's okay. I just kind of was trying to throw everything at the board all at once. This was a little bit rushed, I will say. It was like a tiny tad bit rushed. But here I am on the lining. I wanted to like make sure that her wrinkles were included. That was another thing in the third character design that I was working on. With the one that looked a little bit more like a grandma. That's another reason why I kind of ruled that one out, is because she looked a little bit too old, because this character is supposed to be in like their 60s, which is aged, but it shouldn't be too old. Although in like the 1920s, you know, healthcare wasn't all the best, so, you know, probably it wouldn't be like too far off, but I didn't want to make them look more like a grandma. I do really like how the silhouette of this character looks. I know I said I struggled with like the pose in the silhouette, but what I mean is like her body type and the way that looks, because silhouettes were really important during that era. So I think that this design was strong in that aspect. But yeah, I do think I could have gone with a better pose. I'm not upset about how the pose is. I just probably could have been better, you know. I kind of wish I also had lined the initial sketch that I had done, and instead of doing like a completely different pose, well, I still needed to do a completely different pose, but I wish that I had also done that one as well, so that way you had two different images. I might do that again later. I don't know. Okay, so here is the second major struggle that I had, was this color palette. So at first I was like, oh yeah, I have pulled up all these reference images. I can work off of that and it'll be fine. And I was like, okay, I want her to have like a blue dress, like, because I was seeing a lot of blue tones. And obviously there was also a picture that was black and white, so I couldn't really tell the tones. And I was like, yeah, you know, blue is a really neutral color. It's a really calming color. So I thought it would be cool to have like this neutral, like friendly kind of character who's a serial killer, you know. They have like this facade that she puts on, like she's like this widow, kind, nice housewife who's, you know, not a kind housewife. But I was really struggling with it because the colors just weren't working with me. Like I just didn't like the way they look. So I just kind of, you'll see that I go back on what I was doing, because I was just trying to figure out what I wanted and how I could really refine this piece. I had somewhat idea of what I wanted her to look like. I kind of wanted, you know, middle age. I kind of wanted to go for that, you know, white picket fence wife, perfect little like trophy wife almost, which I don't. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was going for, and the sort of idea that I had. I was thinking a lot about like that wife from Edward Scissorhands, and just kind of going for that aesthetic. And it was here at the hat that I kind of was really struggling, especially because I wanted to have it be two-tone with like a splash of color in the middle. And then I realized that this green mix kind of looked a lot better than the blue, and the green and the blue was really contrasting, and so I didn't really know how I wanted to do that. So, doing what I normally do for coloring and stuff like that, I decided to find a color palette, because I was like, I cannot do this on my own. I'm still not very great at coloring, and I thought maybe I could do it, maybe I would be able to stick it out, but in fact I was wrong, and I know now. I'm working on it, I'm getting better. So I did still want to try to keep that blue color, So I changed it to a lighter blue with the color palette, and I was like, okay, maybe with this one it'll work a little bit better. And I do like it. It does give a little bit more like Alice in Wonderland type feel though, which I wasn't really too sure about. So I was kind of like going back and forth between whether or not I actually really liked that color, but I decided, maybe once I finish it all completely and colored it in, then maybe I could just like, take a step back, look at it and see if that really works. Because that green hat still felt a little bit too abrasive compared to the dress, because the dress was a very muted blue and the green is a little bit more saturated than what the blue was, so it was like overpowering almost, and so the focus was being drawn to her face. And not that I didn't like that, I just felt like maybe it shouldn't have been that attention grabbing. So that's kind of what I was going with. I colored in, her side objects and stuff. Yeah. So after that, I kind of realized that the blue wasn't working, and so I decided to change the dress to green. And I was like, okay, well, this blue isn't really working for me. Let me flip it around. So I was like, maybe I'll give her a green dress and a blue hat, and see if that works, and see if like that'll match up. And then I was like, it's not really going so well with the blue. I think I'm gonna have to abandon this idea, which was a little sad because I was kind of hoping for that blue, because I feel like blue is a very innocent color, and I still kind of wanted to play on that like sweet but deadly kind of trope. So that's why I was really trying to fight for that blue to stay in there, because blue is also my favorite color, so I'm a little bit biased. So I was really fighting for it. I was really hoping that I can use that blue, but I think what I ended up using is a lot nicer, and I feel like it complements it a little bit more. I'm still not the best with color palette, so I could be completely wrong. I could be talking out of my ass right now. I don't really know. But for me, I feel like that was good. I added some, beauty marks, some dots, just like, to show some aging dots that pop up when you get older. I did a little bit of that, and then I went on to the shading of the drawing and that sort of thing, which is all pretty much streamlined. It's what I do for everything. Shading it was pretty easy. I didn't want to do too dark of shading because, I wanted to keep it pretty clean. So it's just like basic loco shading. I had sun going in one direction and all that. Nothing too exciting to talk about here. I think overall the character design is okay. I've definitely done stronger character designs in the past. I feel like this one has not been my strongest character design, but it's also not my worst. I think given the timeline that I had and how much time I put into it, I think it was pretty good. If I could change anything, I would probably do a little bit more with like the design, like the basic design workout, and find a better pose. I still think that pose isn't the best it could be. But I don't know, for some reason I couldn't think of a way to like include like the poison look and stuff. I don't know. It's gonna bug me. Maybe I'll redraw this character one day in like a better pose. I added a bit of splatter onto her dress as well. Maybe, she was chopping up some bodies or something. I want it to be visually interesting because we were presenting this, so I was like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do. And this is my final look. There she is, Janice Mayfield, everybody. Woo! So that's the character design. If you want to go ahead and try for yourself with my prompt, go ahead, or there's plenty of generators online. Character design is super fun. I've done some more in the past. I actually had a video idea for that I should probably work on. Character designs are pretty cool. It's not exactly my forte. It's not my forte per se, but I do enjoy doing them, so this was a fun challenge. I'm probably going to be doing more assignment videos because that's all I really have time to do nowadays. So I'm back in school, so I'll be doing homework and all that. The next prompt is a pretty good one, so we'll see what I come up with, but that was this one's prompt. So I hope you enjoyed my breakdown of this process, and if you were interested in seeing more character breakdowns, let me know. I have done character drawing challenges in the past that I would love to break down and talk about if you are interested in that, and seeing how I came up with the ideas and doing research and all that. But yeah, thank you again so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!